Wait, isn't everybody at war over atheism?
Atheism? No, we've learned to get rid of all the isms in our time. Yes, long ago we realized isms are great for those who are rational, but in the hands of irrational people, isms always lead to violence.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's been another week, and of course I'm late this week, but I won't tell you guys that. We'll just say that Daniel messed it up this week. But this is another episode of Tim's 2 Cents, a podcast where basically give you trash advice, and it is of the value of 2 cents, and we're talking 2018 2 cents, not 1962 2 cents, so you're really not getting too much here, but it's my kind of attempt at, I guess, finding something right with any of the shit in the world. Like I guess I haven't really talked about this before too much. If you haven't listened to this show before, good, you picked a good one, I guess, maybe. I guess the whole reason why I do this is because, and this could sound super pretentious, but I'll preface it with the fact that I'm just as full of shit as anything I'm about to say is anybody. The more I critique somebody, it's most likely because I see stuff they do and I go, oh, I would have wanted to have thought of that. Normally, it seems like whenever I'm critiquing somebody, it's more coming out of a way of I should have done that first, or that would be a good idea if I could actually think of it. But not always the case though. But basically, the idea is to try to find, like in any belief system, in any kind of rigid, like a group where that's kind of hard for me to find anything anymore in my life where I'm like, I am this thing, no caveats, no I'm a this, but also whatever. Like, to be able to just call yourself by one name seems strange, seems kind of, I don't know, not egotistical, but like almost wishing or believing that you do have something figured out. Because, not to say that, I'm not trying to say that I have a problem with taking the name because I can't find something that is necessarily, that makes sense to me, or that would even be attractive to me to think of and would be kind of cool. But just, I don't have any faith in any of this stuff for being like universally true anymore. I don't know if that's a problem with me or a problem just with there being too much information out there. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But I just don't have any kind of a, it doesn't seem like there's not a word. And that's probably a good thing, because it's not like the labels in your life aren't necessarily positive all the time. Sometimes, or I mean, I that's probably not news to anybody besides myself, but, they don't, like, it's just a way of looking at something. So just because you can put a label on yourself for something doesn't mean that you are any more sorted out. It's maybe you're a little bit more comfortable with gray edges. That's kind of what always fucks me up with things, is where the kind of ideas and the strategies of living inside of that ideology kind of get to where it's a little bit fuzzy. Then I'm like, well, if you're not gonna give me more information, why the fuck am I listening to the rest of it? Like, what's the point of doing this whenever it's, if in the gray areas of an idea it becomes completely useless, or it becomes just do whatever you want then. It just seems to kind of get rid of any kind of higher regard I would hold for the idea before that, if then it doesn't have kind of a very concrete, well, this is what's right here. And that is, as I'm thinking about it even more, probably more of a problem with how I'm thinking, because I guess maybe a lot of these things aren't promising perfect solutions to everything, but they do seem to come across that way, and people who are super into them kind of present them that way until you ask certain questions, and they're, well, maybe I don't really know. But like, oh, the rest of the time you should definitely do it, and it's the best thing ever, and this is why the whole rest of the world's falling apart, and I've figured this out somehow. But anyway, this is enough of a rant to start this off, but this is episode 14, I think, and I want to do Luddism, Neo-Luddism, and I know that's the most boring intro to a podcast ever, but I'm going to leave you guys with that for a little bit, because I want to talk about, first, we're able to do all these new shows. We're able to do my show, the Tim's 2 Cents. We're able to do the live weekly podcast, the You, Me, and BTC, which is where you've probably heard me or come to this from. Every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have, you can get us live at ymb.com/live, and we have chat there, so you can kind of get involved with the show as it's happening. If you want to comment on this show, if you want to comment on Zach's show, if you want to comment on any of the shows that we have, that aren't live, it's the easiest way to get to people is Twitter. And mine is BakersDozen93. If you have any kind of comments, positives, negatives, tell me to go fuck myself on Twitter or anything like that, I'll be more likely to see it there. Still doesn't mean I'm going to respond because, it's might not be worth my time, but what is anymore? But as I was saying, then there's also Zach's weekly show, and he actually just put one out before me a couple hours ago. It's called the Coin Pod, where he, like You Mean BTC, it's very much centered on cryptocurrency. It's centered on Bitcoin. It's centered on blockchain. It's centered on all these very technical aspects of kind of You Mean BTC, where I've taken all of the philosophizing and bullshit from You, Me, and BTC and kind of compress that into my show. CoinPod is taking all of the actual information that you might get from You, Me, and BTC, all the good interviews, all that shit, and putting it in there. So check that out. Check Zach out. We also have a newer podcast called, although both mine and Zach are still pretty new too, but the Little Brother podcast. I don't know if that really works, but his Unpopular Opinion. I've met the one guy who does it. He's got some interesting ideas. He also sounds like a Canadian, but he's not Canadian, so check him out if you like that. But they're not about blockchain. They're not about cryptocurrency. They're not about any of that stuff. It's just it's more kind of than what You Mean BTC is, where it's a hangout, but it's not focused on cryptocurrency. It's a hangout. We're maybe talking about some recent event that kind of has a very distant relation to Bitcoin, and we kind of get off onto different things. But that is not this show. That is not the show you're listening to now. But all of those have been brought to you by Chronologic. And what Chronologic is an Ethereum system, a basis where you're going to be able to set up smart contracts, proof of debt contracts. I don't even know if that's really a thing, but basically focusing on the kind of smart contract laws, smart contract implementations that we can have in our world, where we don't have to necessarily trust a signature on a piece of paper. We don't have to. We can send tokens as a way to make a signature, and not have to rely on things like centralized servers or just a centralized building, even for records like that and for making contracts. So if that's something that interests you, check out Chronologic. You'll hear an ad later for them with Daniel's strangely changed voice. You can find them there. Let them know at Chronologic that you heard about it through here. Make them give us more money. But anyway, yeah, I said I wanted to talk about Luddism, Neo-Luddism, New Luddism, because from a little bit that I've been reading, because most of this is going to come from just my kind of bullshit inside of my head as to what I think about. I've read it's a little bit on the stuff, like I have like a cursory knowledge of the kind of argument for it. I do have some sympathies, like I find with a lot of things. But basically, I can't find anything about old Luddism, because I think Luddite is normally like a pejorative term, or maybe not as strong as pejorative, but at least a derogatory term for someone who doesn't really like technology. One of the more recent examples would be like the taxi drivers kind of striking against Uber and the kind of attacking Uber drivers, where Luddite was somebody who, I think I was reading this, that started with a bunch of weavers and loom runners in the 18th century, 19th century in England, where they were worried about these new machines coming into fact. Like, they were learning these skills, they were learning how to do these things by hand, and then they were seeing more and more machines brought into the factory, so that a guy who didn't have the 10 years of experience that maybe you had built trying to learn how to do this kind of, it's a craft, but it's also become commercially productive, like commercially a commercial desire to have more of it. So you're not, it's not just an art form. It also has to have some kind of not that it has to, but it has a marketable value. People want it regardless of if it is crafted artistically or not, but it is still an art to making it. Like, I guess maybe swords would be a thing, although now if you buy a sword, normally you want it crafted. But in the past, there was kind of like an art to swordsmanship, but there was also just a need for swords. Like, people would just buy, like, I don't give a shit if it's made by what, I don't care how you formed it, I don't care any of this stuff. But basically, Luddites would be against these new machines because less skilled workers who had put in less time, could then just replace them. It could be that a less skilled worker will replace them, or possibly, and this is showing up more and more recently, where a machine could just completely replace them. A lot of fast food employees should be Luddites, because that's where the next shit is going to happen, most likely. We're also seeing it with cars right now, and this is more just why I was thinking about. I've heard people kind of bring it up in a cursory way in other podcasts. They don't really go too much in on it, because in general, I don't really know though. Like, it seems like it no matter what you're asking about, like what people think, whether it's technology or politics or anything like that, normally the biggest answer you're going to get, the most like the interaction is just going to be kind of the most recent thing they read. And that's definitely true for me. If I let myself kind of I'm very easy to persuade if I just read like a 2-page paper about something. It doesn't take very much. Because I don't have that much of an idea as to what has gone on in the past. It's a lot of people don't know history. I think I have at least read some, but then the problem with a lot of this stuff is you read it and then you read other things and they're like, well, that's bullshit. And even if it isn't, you still kind of have that seed of doubt implanted in your mind. So I'm always still like, I'm not quite sure what actually happened in the past. Obviously for the guy who loses his job, who loses whatever he spent 5 years apprenticing to be a weaver, and then you just get replaced by a machine and some random dude who they just showed to work levers a couple days. That sucks for you. That's pretty bad, and I understand being angry about that. I understand hating that. I understand kind of hating a world that pushes in that way, but I think that is also how the world has always been. I don't really have if we're talking a moral argument, I would almost even say that I definitely think, as far as like a moral argument goes, that Luddism, or just that kind of concept of, well, why do we need to do this? How our life is okay now. Well, why can't we be satisfied with how things are going, with how advanced things are? Why can't we slow this down a little bit? Maybe like people point to the Amish and say, well, they don't need the stuff, and they don't have these technological advancements, and they live fine, they live great, and that's all good. So I do understand the kind of, I guess it would also go along with like Green Party, or not Green Party, but I'm trying to think of what the word would even be, but saving the app. No, I'm completely blanking on even the word. But like ecology and stuff, maybe Earth, maybe. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a moment right now, but just in general, the idea of kind of keeping us closer to the Earth, maybe making things a little bit more natural, like the idea that things were better when we just went out and hunted and didn't have to go work a job. This is all getting back to where I was saying how if you ask the majority of people in life what on certain things, like should robots take this over, should they not, I don't know how to differentiate which way people would answer besides just kind of like whatever they read last or whatever they watched last, because most people will definitely not be completely against even new advancements. Like, they'd be all for new phones, maybe, but maybe they would be against driverless cars or replacing fast food wages or fast food workers. So I don't know how people would answer. I lean towards that. In general, they're going to be kind of, if they're somewhat involved, if they are a fast food worker, if they're a trucker, if they're someone who makes a living on something that is at least recently being brought into question because of automation, I think they would definitely be more likely to go with that, and then to make the arguments about how, well, no, this is tearing things apart. We need, why do we need whatever robot drivers or robot fast food workers or anything like that? These are jobs that are good. They've been around for a long time. I've made my living. My grandfather did this. I'm never going to give this up. And you can think of plenty of movies where this is the case, and even kids movies where there's this new business coming in, and they're going to tear down some old part of the town, and then everybody bands together to just save the old part of the town. It somehow makes more money than the new business would, or I don't remember what the poem is, and maybe it's not, it's a ballad or something like that, but the old Henry, maybe, where the guy outlaid tracks, I think, or carved out the side of a mountain compared to a machine, but then he died after. So I don't know how that was supposed to help their case. But that, and then even one of the more famous ones is just Fight Club. The idea of, well, this is just bad for us in general to just be working all the time and to not be kind of bringing ourselves back to nature, bringing ourselves back to what really matters in life, the difference between living and dying. And the people bring up consumerism. These are all things that I do have at least a feeling of a problem with. I don't like the idea of consumerism. I don't like the idea of people losing their jobs. I don't like the idea of taking us further away from the day-to-day things that matter. But I can't. It seems like too much of an emotional decision, I think, to make like that, which, I mean, maybe for some people is okay, but I don't see that as being a legitimate reason to halt something from happening, because I think any kind of anything that happens does have something of a risk, and why is this risk any more important than another risk? Why is your losing your job because you didn't pick a correct path or a better path, or even just a different one? It's just not how the world. It's not the world's object. It's not my responsibility. At least I don't see it as, not necessarily me. I don't see the individual as having a responsibility to ensure fairness around him. I think it's probably good. I would prefer to be around people who would do that, but I don't see it as a moral imperative. I don't see it as I need to make sure that my neighbor, there's a good practical reason for ensuring that your neighbor is doing okay and that he doesn't maybe lose his job at the factory to a machine. But there's no, I don't like the appeal to emotion. I don't like the appeal to, things will just be better when we have more people working. Life kind of doesn't really seem to work out like that way. But I'll try to talk about this in a little bit more of a structured way, because I've kind of mostly just already done why I have some kind of, I have a leaning towards believing or having some sympathy with Neo-Luddites, or just Ludditism in general, if that's a phrase, where I don't think that modern technology, I don't think that all these new advancements have made, they haven't made us any happier. It at least doesn't seem like it. Now, they have made it so that we should be happier, but there's the problem. That's not the problem of technology. I don't think. I think that's just us in general. Like, I think that if given, I mean, and again, this does, like, even other places in the world, other places in the United States, even this isn't that much of a focus. People's big issue is not something that's happening on Twitter. Like, they have some life-altering thing being in their life, even if that's just the threat of maybe being killed or just being in a dangerous area or sickness. I mean, that's more we're going to get into different other countries. But just like the idea of removing any kind of connection to your life as a human, like, instead of having face-to-face conversations, being more focused on looking at a screen or sharing stuff with people on Twitter, or and you can make as many arguments about, well, it's just brought so many people together, it's connected the world, but then it also then just does give people echo chambers of where now we have everybody who posts online posts in a way that is kind of just like assuming that they're correct. And that's kind of just how you have to present your argument online, because it's familiar enough that you're willing to say things. It's familiar enough that you're willing to express yourself, but it's also, you've never met these people in life. You've never gotten a feel for how they are, how combative they are, how quick they are to just tear you down. So if you don't come into it with a decent amount of kind of self-confidence and saying, well, I mean, I know that this is how it works, you're going to get shot down way easier. Again, all of this to say, I don't see Twitter, I don't see the internet, I don't see any of these things as being inherently good for humanity. We've definitely talked about this, I think, before on You, Me, and BTC. I'd probably be, besides maybe John when he used to be on, I would probably be the most sympathetic, at least, to this argument. Daniel's definitely more of a tech freak than I am. I'm also just much more negative, but that's also come from just seeing how even just like technology has been kind of used to turn just the world in general into just one big long camera. There's cameras everywhere. So even if and it's not even a government thing. It's not even necessarily, like, especially in the US, it's not that, oh, you can get caught on a security camera someplace, or the police have cameras in the lights, and those are all true, and they can take pictures like that. I'm not saying like to spy on you, but just the idea of, well, we're not even going to catch you in the act of running a red light, but we'll just take a picture at the back, and then we can maybe kind of prove it was you, and we can maybe do more than just give you a fine, but whatever. Everybody else has a phone. Everybody else just has a camera constantly. So there is everything is kind of just feels different. And I kind of remember, because I didn't really grow up with a smartphone. I got a flip phone at like 17, I think. So I was like still right on the edge of where most teenagers didn't have cell phones. A lot of them did, but I'd say that still most of them didn't, or at least it wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now at such a young age. So I do remember kind of the time where I got the smartphone. I kind of dropped into let's just constantly check Twitter, let's constantly check Snapchat, let's constantly have some new kind of entertainment popping up. So I understand the kind of reticence to want to continue that, because, this is like, there's probably, these things are doing something to our head where we kind of crave having 30-second 30-second little bits of entertainment kind of constantly. We have like just quick little entertainment, because our minds are just going all over the place, and we want to focus on different things, be entertained by all different kinds of shit. So I can definitely, again, I don't know if I can say it too enough, where I'm like, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that maybe the stuff isn't good for us. It's probably not. So yeah, cheers for all that. I mean, I've spent a little bit too much time now giving the positive for this, but I'll do a negative, and it's, I think, enough still to say kind of, I haven't really made a judgment on most of the stuff. I think like an out and out judgment before I do it. I definitely have a bias whenever I talk about certain subjects on here. But I think the negatives do still outweigh the positive feeling of, well, why don't we focus on keeping ourselves more grounded in at least the physical reality. Before that, before I talk about negatives for that, you're going to hear a little commercial from Daniel, because technology's invading and we're selling your ear space for money. I don't know, maybe not, but enjoy. I'll see you guys back here in a little bit.
Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by Chronologic.network. Chronologic is an Ethereum-based project that aims to solve time-related problems on the blockchain. Through Chronologic's 3 core products, the Ethereum alarm clock, debt smart contracts, and the day token minting mechanism, they solve the problems of payment scheduling, crypto loan time constraints, and unstable token launches. Find out more at Chronologic.network.
And welcome back. I hope you guys enjoyed your new Indoctrination by Daniel Brown. You can catch him with me on the You, Me, and BTC podcast every single Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get us on the chat there. Tell us what you want to talk about in the show, or just tell us how great we are or how shitty all the other podcasts are. Please start attacking people on Twitter, also on Daniel's behalf. Tell them YMB sent you, and we're looking to take on some new challengers. I don't really know what that means, but we'll see what it does. Yeah, I mean, I already spent a decent amount of time talking why I have my sympathies towards Luddism and kind of the idea that technology will eventually make us obsolete. I've heard the argument before, and I'll give this argument just for the sake of, like, whenever Luddites bring up stuff, there's something called the Luddite fallacy, where economics, or people try to explain that, well, because less skilled work will be taken to make something, it'll be cheaper, which then means more people will buy it, and then also that means that as long as you're in that business, there will be more kind of output that is needed, so maybe you just get a less skilled job and you work with a machine. So you're not necessarily going to lose your job. That works to an extent, but I'm sure there are still sometimes people who just lose their job. Like, there's still going to be a job available if that person who has spent 10 years getting all the training he needs is not willing to be paid the amount of money that they can afford while running the machine. Then, I mean, he's kind of fucked, and it's definitely not like a good answer for the individual. But as far as that problem, if someone brings it up outside of an actual context, if it's just like, well, what happens to that guy? Well, you can say there's still going to be a job. However, I mean, eventually, I think we kind of just have to admit we're going to get replaced by robot. The amount of time that we have to work in our life has been steadily going down. At some point, it's not like it's just going to plateau. That's not how we work. We've never done that before. We don't do that. It's like, humans never seem to be able to kind of exist in equilibrium for very long. We either go one way or the other, and it's definitely looking like the more we do, the less we will be working as far as like physical labor. Now there's still stuff right now where you're kind of selling your brain, you're selling your idea, you're selling your own human ability to abstractly think about things and to come to different conclusions without being told to necessarily. You can still sell that, but at some point, most likely, the computers will replace most of that shit too. And there will be a lot of people out of jobs. And they are not necessarily going to get those jobs back. I don't know if that's a problem. Maybe it is. But my thing is, I don't fucking care. I think that any kind of, and this was pretty much my only against this. I mean, it can be broken down into plenty of different things, but I'll try to keep it simple. It doesn't matter. Like, the fact that maybe I'm out of a job in 15 years and I'm unemployable doesn't mean that this advancement it doesn't mean that this advancement isn't an incredible step forward for humanity. It doesn't make the world more interesting, doesn't make the world more kind of cool, or whatever it is that you want. Like, there's nothing that says that I have to that my happiness and my ability to sustain myself in this life based off of the skills that I've decided to learn or skills that I've decided not learn, there's no guarantee that I get to exist off of that. There's no guarantee that I get to do any of that. And that risk and that problem and that thing where people look like they're getting pushed to the side by technology and by advancements is very true, and it's very, very much a bad situation for those people. But as far as people living at least in America or developed countries, where we've kind of subsidized our wealth with the rest of the world, it's a lot more comfortable. My life is a lot better because refrigerators decide to replace the ice industry. Like, that was fucking huge before. Like, my life is a lot more streamlined because I don't have to worry about that. My life is more streamlined because I don't have to worry about mostly cooling in general, or heating. I don't need to be buying wood from people to heat my house. I don't need to be doing all this different shit. So if you would all kind of enjoy... Now, I could see if you go into this and you go, I don't give a shit. Like, maybe it's better for our mental health, maybe it's better for our spiritual health, whatever your argument is. I believe that getting rid of this technology will eventually benefit us in the long run. You at least do have to admit that, yeah, and it's going to make life suck too. Like, just because you get to go out and, like, oh, good, I get to go out and hunt and then shoot one deer for the day and then eat it and then be like, well, I guess I have to hope that I do that tomorrow too and forever. Like, there's a reason why we do make these advancements, and we like to secure future. Now that can become unhealthy because then we just focus on the future. We focus on and we can be led and easily kind of distracted from things by going, oh, here, look at this carrot that we just have way ahead of you. Just keep on following this little path, and eventually you get to that, and you'll just love it. And we eventually find that we don't actually feel that much better when we finally reach that, whether that's a new car or a new whatever. There's kind of a fleeting sense of pleasure, and that it's gone. But that's not a bad thing. Kind of the drive to exceed what your situation is at the present, the drive to do that has been the only thing that makes life interesting, and to me makes life worth, like, doing again. Like, what is the point of just getting out of bed in the morning? I don't want to ask that question so much, like, so blatantly, because there are reasons. Maybe you have a family, maybe you have someone you just love to be around. But as far as how I feel, how far as how it seems like, again, not to say that I'm making advancements for any of you, because I'm not. If I'm making any advancements, it's for myself and myself alone. But a lot of people have made advancements, and sometimes it's been for themselves solely, and then it kind of worked out for everybody else. Or sometimes people have legitimately pushed things as part of a cause where then they increase the standard of living by huge margins compared to anything else that's happened in history, compared to any new government program. The standard of living has been increased by our just need for more shit and our disregard for the safety of new shit. Like, people just died so much with airplanes, with airbags and any new safety thing didn't, like, it fucked people up for a while before they figured out exactly how to make it. Like, you don't, like, how long do you think bikes, like, even just bicycle helmets were fucking kids up or weren't really saving them because they weren't really designed in any way that made sense? And we just see what happens for a while, but that's everything. But history seems like, whether it's the wars or it's just kind of day-to-day living, history kind of seems just like a meat grinder, and then it kind of shoots out information every now and then that kind of lets us know, oh, okay, let's not do that like that. There's a little bit better of a way. Maybe if we kind of tweak this, no, it killed somebody else. Maybe if we tweak it again, okay, that killed him a little bit less violently. But we just learned from other people's lives sucking. Like the whole, I think, I don't know if this is even a saying, but something about like having a sibling is good because you can learn from their mistakes. That's the only thing we ever seem to learn from, is just learning from other people fucking up. Learning from, okay, I know I don't have to do that, and if it's that catastrophically bad, I can figure something else out. But I think that there isn't a problem with continuing to expand technology. I don't think there is a moral problem. I don't think that having a job that is being priced out by machine competition is something that I should have to feel bad for you about. I don't think that's something that is worthy of commiserating with in the same breath as someone who's being murdered, or someone who's being starved by their government, or starved by anybody, or enslaved or anything like that. Just the idea that, well, I don't really get why all this new stuff has happened. Like, you're like literally standing in the way of progress. Like, people make that comment about Christians all the time about how they're getting in the way of medical advancements, and there's definitely a place for that. I understand that. They definitely are. But then people, we can't get rid of the fucking fast food people. What are we going to do with all the people that do that? What we need to continue to do? Truck drivers? We can't get rid of truck drivers. These things are so dangerous. We should just stop all the testing now and don't let the driverless cars get any better. Did you hear they hit somebody that one day? It's crazy. So literally these people become blocks in the way of, in the whole emotional arguing of that, whatever, like, one person you heard of that has this issue, that has them losing a job because of a machine or whatever it is, using that as a way to stop us from seeing what new shit we can do. Because if that's not what we've been doing for the past however many thousands of years we've kept history, I don't know what we have been doing, because it doesn't seem like we've been working towards anything but seeing all the new shit we can build. That's kind of just how people seem to work. There's no, like, stuff doesn't just stop. But hopefully, maybe it will someday. That's the also kind of scary, is we just hit kind of this wall and we go, oh, well, I don't know what to do now, and then we just kind of do drugs until we die or something, which is kind of seeming like that's how at least the popular culture is kind of turning right now, but maybe that's a different episode. But thanks for listening. Thanks for checking this out. Remember to check out You Me BTC and Zach Voles, The Coin Pod. You Me BTC live every night, every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And come back next week, listen to me complain about stuff and bullshit my way through another episode. But thank you guys for listening. Have a good week.